Police were called to a property in Ashland Close just before 7 p.m. last night. Officers attended alongside colleagues from the East of England Ambulance Service and, on arrival, found 3 women with serious injuries.
Well, the evidence really against Kyle Clifford was overwhelming. He had previously admitted to all the charges against him, and that was the murder of his ex-girlfriend Louise Hunt, the murder of her sister Hannah Hunt, and the murder of their mother Carol Hunt.
In the Irish Hennessy, Carlingford Lock and AP McCoy, get up! Of course he did! Carlingford Lock beats Fox Rock. Lord Windermere, the Gold Cup winner, back in 3rd place, but he ran a tremendous Cheltenham trial.
The Hunt family was well known in broadcasting circles. John Hunt, a respected TV racing commentator, was celebrated for his insightful commentary and warm personality. His family, his wife Carol, aged 61, and their 2 daughters Louise, 25, and Hannah, 28, were the heart of his world. Carol was known for her kindness and grace, while Louise and Hannah, though young, had already begun to make their mark in their own ways. Their life together appeared peaceful and full of promise, with the family often seen sharing smiles and laughter at public events and on television interviews. However, beneath the public smiles lay private challenges. As in many families, there were struggles and unspoken tensions that were kept away from the spotlight. But nothing could have prepared them for the darkness that was about to descend upon their lives. On a cold evening that would forever scar the memories of those who knew the Hunts, tragedy struck. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, an unimaginable act unfolded, a crime so brutal it would rock the nation. That night, Kyle Clifford, a man whose past was marked by violent behavior and disturbing obsessions, carried out an attack that would leave the Hunt family shattered. According to evidence later presented in court, Clifford targeted the Hunt residence with chilling precision. It began with an unannounced intrusion, and within moments, the home that once radiated warmth turned into a scene of horror. Carol Hunt was found brutally murdered in her own living room, her life extinguished in an act of savagery that defied comprehension. Shortly after, the bodies of Louise and Hannah, who had returned home from an evening out, were discovered. The sisters, full of promise and dreams, had been taken from their family in an act of pure, unrelenting violence. When the first calls came into the police station reporting a disturbance at the Hunt residence, investigators arrived to a scene of chaos. The blood-stained floors, shattered glass, and the overwhelming silence in the aftermath of violence told a story of brutality. Emergency services worked feverishly to secure the scene, and forensic teams began collecting evidence. Initial examinations suggested that the attack had been meticulously planned. The weapon used, a modified high-powered firearm, had left distinctive marks hinting at the killer's technical expertise. Traces of trace evidence, including fingerprints and DNA samples, were carefully cataloged. Detectives noted that the method of execution was deliberate. The victims were killed swiftly and with a cold precision that left little chance for resistance. In the days following the crime, the investigation deepened. Authorities discovered that Kyle Clifford, a man with a history of violent outbursts and previous run-ins with the law, had been seen in the vicinity of the Hunt residence on the night of the murders. His presence, coupled with prior intelligence about his potential motives, made him an immediate person of interest. Kyle Clifford was not a stranger to controversy. His troubled past had long been a subject of discussion among law enforcement, though many had hoped he would eventually reform. However, his latest actions proved that his inner demons had only grown more violent. Neighbors recalled seeing a quiet, brooding figure lurking near the Hunt home, and anonymous tips soon began to circulate among the investigative teams. Clifford's background revealed a history of isolation, mental health issues, and a growing fixation on retribution. His motives appeared personal, a deep-seated anger that had finally erupted in a moment of unspeakable violence. As detectives pieced together his movements on the night of the crime, a clearer picture emerged of a man who had planned the attack with disturbing detail. Surveillance footage from nearby streets and witness testimonies helped link Clifford to the scene, setting the stage for the case that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Forensic experts played a crucial role in the investigation. The unique characteristics of the weapon used, combined with trace evidence such as fibers and unidentified DNA, began to point unambiguously toward Clifford. Investigators discovered that certain items found at the scene, personal belongings inadvertently left behind, matched those in Clifford's possession. Moreover, digital evidence, including cell phone records and GPS data, placed Clifford within close proximity of the Hunt residence on that fatal night. The mounting physical and circumstantial evidence created a compelling case against him, and the pressure on the investigators intensified. Public outcry grew as news of the gruesome murders spread, demanding swift justice for the Hunt family. After weeks of painstaking work, law enforcement finally obtained enough evidence to move forward with an arrest. On a crisp morning, officers executed a well-coordinated operation at a rundown apartment where Clifford was believed to be hiding. In a tense standoff, Clifford was apprehended without further incident. His calm, almost eerie demeanor during the arrest only added to the chilling narrative surrounding the case. The arrest was met with mixed reactions, relief among the community, and a renewed determination by the police to ensure that justice was served for Carol, Louise, and Hannah Hunt. The media descended upon the case, and Clifford's name quickly became synonymous with a heinous crime. Kyle Clifford's trial was one of the most anticipated legal proceedings in recent history. The courtroom was packed with members of the public, journalists, and, most poignantly, family members of the victims, all seeking justice. Over the course of the trial, prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, meticulous forensic analysis, compelling witness testimonies, and a series of circumstantial clues that painted a damning picture of Clifford's involvement. Under intense cross-examination, Clifford's previously impenetrable facade began to crumble. In a dramatic moment that sent shockwaves through the courtroom, he broke down and confessed to the murders. His confession was both methodical and chilling. He recounted how years of isolation, simmering resentment, and a desire for retribution had led him to commit the unthinkable. Clifford's words revealed a mind deeply scarred by neglect, now twisted into a weapon of terror. Following a grueling trial, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Kyle Clifford was found guilty of the murder of Carol Hunt and her daughters, Louise and Hannah. The sentence that followed was severe: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For the Hunt family and the community at large, the verdict was a bittersweet moment of closure after enduring unspeakable loss. The sentencing marked the end of a long and arduous pursuit of justice, but it also served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of violence. As the gavel fell, voices in the courtroom rose in a mix of relief, sorrow, and righteous indignation, a collective outcry that would resonate for years to come. In the months following the trial, the story of the Hunt family's tragedy and Kyle Clifford's conviction dominated headlines. Memorial services were held for Carol, Louise, and Hannah, and public vigils became a common sight as communities sought to heal from the collective trauma. The case spurred significant changes in local law enforcement practices and led to calls for improved support systems for victims of violent crime. For many, the case became a symbol of how a single act of unthinkable violence could shatter a community. The Hunt family, forever marked by their loss, became vocal advocates for victims' rights and reforms in criminal justice. Their courage in the face of unimaginable grief inspired widespread support and sparked debates about how society could better protect vulnerable families from similar fates. Today, the legacy of Kyle Clifford's crimes endures as a somber reminder of the depths to which human cruelty can descend. His actions have left an indelible mark on the national consciousness, a case that not only brought justice for one family, but also served as a catalyst for broader discussions about mental health, social neglect, and the importance of early intervention. In academic circles and media retrospectives, the case is frequently examined as a cautionary tale. Experts point to the interplay between a troubled upbringing, isolation, and the absence of timely support as factors that can culminate in such devastating acts of violence. The story of the Hunt family and Kyle Clifford continues to influence policy debates and community initiatives aimed at preventing future tragedies. The tragedy that befell the Hunt family has led to concrete changes in both local and national policies. Law enforcement agencies have revamped their investigative techniques, and new support networks have been established for families affected by violent crime. Mental health services have also seen increased funding, driven by a renewed commitment to addressing the root causes of criminal behavior. The case has left a legacy that serves as both a memorial to Carol, Louise, and Hannah Hunt, and a powerful impetus for societal change. Their story remains a haunting chapter in the nation's history, a stark reminder that behind every headline lies a human tragedy, and that collective action is essential to ensure such darkness is not allowed to take root again.
Do you accept, Kyle, that based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people?
No comment.
Do you accept that you have meticulously planned this murder from the moment that you split up Louise?
No comment.
From the moment that she sent you that text message at the end of June, you began to plan her murder? Yes?
No comment.
It's evident quite clearly from your purchase of the crossbow, from your purchase of the additional bolts, from the purchase of the gun and the knife, in the 2 weeks leading up to the murders. Do you agree?
No comment.
Do you agree that it shows that you only had one thing in mind, and that planning began when you purchased these items? You purchased rope and you purchased duct tape in order to restrain Louise and Hannah and Carol, didn't you?
No comment.
5-6 days before this happened, you make these significant purchases that really only have one plausible explanation, didn't you?
No comment.
The only plausible explanation is that they were purchased in order for you to carry out these murders. Do you agree?
No comment.
You got to the address and you came well prepared. You came prepared with Louise's belongings, didn't you?
No comment.
Louise's belongings were your ticket into that address. Yes?
No comment.
You deceived your way into that address at the front door with Carol, pretending that you were having a civil and friendly conversation and returning Louise's property, and you'd even written out a thank you card. Yes?
No comment.
Next thing I'd like to speak to you about, Kyle, is some more information, some more evidence that we've obtained from the download of your mobile phone. So on the mobile phone, in the notes section, there is a note which is titled Last Letter, and it's written to different family members as individual paragraphs addressed to each individual family member. This item was created on the 26th of June, and the last modification was on the 7th of July. The opening part of the note reads as such: "Please don't think of this as me throwing my life away. I have lived, and I am grateful for everything and everyone that has been a part of it. It is now my time to leave and be at peace, as this is what I ultimately want. I know you will all have so many questions and wish you could have done something different to prevent this. However, none of you have failed, and there is simply nothing any of you could have done. This is my decision to just be at peace. You all have to take care of each other and speak to each other, as that will be the best thing for you all. I love you all so much." You okay, Carl? To carry on? When you wrote that note, had you already planned the murders of Louise, Carol and Hannah? So I'm interested in the words "prevent this." So tell me what you mean by prevent this.
comment,
Do you mean the murders of Carol, Hannah and Louise?
no comment,
The next note is addressed to myself. I don't want to live my life without her. I don't want to experience new things. Nothing I can think of can make me happy. I know I could have gone to therapy, found faith, and become a new, better person, but I just simply don't want to. I'm so sorry I didn't wait to move on and find my future wife, have the children I always wanted. What do you mean by that?
no comment,
Explain to me why you decided to deprive Hannah and Louise of that privilege.
no comment,
What gave you the right to do that?
no comment,
What gave you the right to deprive Carol of seeing her future grandchildren?
no comment,
It's a very self-centred note and doesn't take into account anybody else. Do you agree with that?
no comment,
There's no apology to the Hunt family, is there?
no comment,
The only apology is to yourself. Do you feel that these are quite self-centred words?
no comment,
Why didn't you seek help, Kyle?
no comment,
You couldn't be bothered, is what the letter suggests. Am I wrong?
no comment,
You don't want to live your life without her. Explain that.
no comment,
But of course, you sit here in front of us and she's dead. Tell me how this has happened.
no comment,
Is your intention to make people feel sorry for you writing these letters?
no comment,
Look at your behaviour. Look how calmly and nonchalantly you walk away from that house. You've just killed 3 people and you stroll away like you're going down the shops. It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a loss of control. You didn't go to the address and all of a sudden form this intent to kill Carol, kill Louise, kill Hannah. You'd gone there with that sole intention in mind. You went there. The CCTV footage shows throughout that you are cool, you are calm, you're collected, you're considered. There is nothing about that which suggests that you've gone there for anything else than to kill almost an entire family. I'm right in what I'm saying, aren't I, Kyle?
no comment,
Please correct me if I am completely wrong.
Barbarous attack on her and her family. You first killed her mother, Carol, who even on that day showed you nothing but kindness moments before you attacked her. You raped and killed Louise, who had been as gentle as she could in ending her relationship with you after your arrogance and anger proved too much for her to stand. Then you murdered Hannah Hunt, who had done nothing to harm you save supporting her little sister. The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. This is no occasion to subject the family and friends of your victims to any delay or suspense. I therefore make clear at once that for each of these 3 murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which you will never be released. Your brutal and cowardly attack had been planned over about 11 days. You conducted extensive research into the movements of Louise's father John, into her mother's Facebook page, into buying a crossbow, a knife and an air pistol, and even into the weather on the day of the attack. You bought rope, duct tape, petrol cans, the knife you used in the attack, and a crossbow. You wrote letters to your family dripping with self-pity. On the day of the attack, you first parked well away from the Hunt family home to check if Louise's father was there. Researching his work when you saw his car was indeed outside the house. You approached a second time with a bag of Louise's clothes and a thank you card to Carol and John Hunt, obviously part of a plan to trick Mrs. Hunt into letting you in the house. You first talked to Carol Hunt on the doorstep and persuaded her to admit you. She spoke kindly to you, but you then attacked her, stabbing her to death within moments of entering. You then left the house to collect the crossbow. Louise Hunt had been working in a building in the garden of the house. When she came in, you restrained her with duct tape round her wrists and ankles and gagged her. You kept her there alive for over 2.5 hours. She must have come to realise you'd already killed her mother. During that time, you raped her. Then you murdered her by shooting her with the crossbow as her sister Hannah was about to enter the house. Hannah Hunt was in a rush. She saw you and realised something was very wrong. You then shot her with the crossbow, causing an injury she could never hope to survive, but she remained alive long enough to see the unspeakable violence you had already inflicted on her mother and her sister. Hannah was able to call for help, but when the emergency services arrived, they could not save her. You had fled. You were arrested the next day, whereupon you made a last-minute attempt to kill yourself. I have heard John Hunt, Amy Hunt and Alex Klein speak of their dreadful loss. They were difficult to listen to, given the devastation and heartbreak they recounted. They spoke of Carol, Louise and Hannah as bringing joy, colour and happiness into the lives of everyone they knew. They were funny, hard-working and caring people. Each precious life, so full of potential, of future successes and celebrations, torn away by your appalling violence. The statements of John and Amy Hunt also demonstrated great courage and determination that your terrible crimes will not define them or stop them leading the lives that Carol, Louise and Hannah Hunt would have wished for them. They showed a gentle heroism of which you, Kyle Clifford, can only dream. I've already announced the ultimate sentence I will impose. I now need to set out the technical legal reasoning behind the sentences I have decided upon. To deal with lesser matters, I will impose concurrent terms of 1 year's imprisonment for counts 1 and 2, the possession of the crossbow and the possession of the knife. I choose those sentences on the basis of category A2 under the Sentencing Council guidelines, with the aggravation of their planned use and the threat to the crossbow posed to police officers on the 10th of July. The only mitigation is your lack of previous convictions and, to a limited extent, your age. After a trial, the sentence would have been 15 months, but I deduct 20% for your guilty plea well before trial. The surcharge provisions apply and the order can be drawn up accordingly. I make the order for the deprivation of the items on the list uploaded onto the digital case system by the prosecution, including the crossbow, your laptop and phone. The proper sentence for rape is guided by the Sentencing Council. I find the rape of Louise Hunt to fall into the highest range of the top category 1A for the reasons identified by the prosecution. There is no element of double counting, as I have to impose a concurrent sentence given the nature of the sentence for the murders. I therefore take the upper end of the range of 19 years. There is mitigation in your lack of previous convictions, but serious aggravation in the planning of the crime. I will therefore pass a sentence of 20 years imprisonment for that offence. There are no Sentencing Council guidelines currently in force for the offence of false imprisonment, and the circumstances of that offence are so intertwined with the murders that it is hard to separate them. But in any event, it has to be concurrent with the life sentences, so double counting and totality are not issues. Louise Hunt's detention was prolonged, planned, in her own home, and it falls within the Sentencing Council definition of domestic abuse. For this offence, you are also entitled to a deduction for your guilty plea. I therefore pass a sentence after that 20% reduction of 8 years imprisonment. Guidance on the imposition of the mandatory life sentence custodial term is set out in Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020. A whole life order is normally to be imposed for the murder of 2 or more people where each murder involves a substantial degree of premeditation or planning. Such a disposal is a rare one and reserved for only the most extreme cases. I have considered the guidance of the Court of Appeal in the decisions of Stewart and others, of Kigundu and Osborne. I will not add to the length of these remarks by rehearsing what is set out with great clarity in those judgments, save to highlight 2 points. First, Schedule 21 must be applied in a flexible, not rigid way to achieve a just result. Second, that although paragraph 2.2 of that schedule may have had in mind 2 murders planned then committed on separate occasions, those provisions do not exclude the most severe order being made for multiple killings on the same day. I am satisfied, so that I am sure, that you both planned and contemplated killing all 3 of your victims. I've already mentioned your planning. You knew the routine and habits of that household. You clearly anticipated that Carol Hunt would be in the house, as you went equipped to trick your way inside. You must have known Louise Hunt would be working in the building in the garden, as you knew her routine, and she was the obvious target to be raped and murdered. You knew the routines of the household. You were there for over 4 hours and must have anticipated that Hannah Hunt would return. While you had used Louise Hunt's phone to ensure John Hunt would not be home any time soon, you made no such inquiry about Hannah. You would have known she wore a uniform for work, which she would be bound to come home to change before doing anything else in the evening. I am sure that Hannah too was part of your premeditation and that you intended to murder her if the chance presented itself. Those findings alone could lead to the imposition of a whole life term, but there are 4 further very serious aggravating factors. First, the relevant section of the schedule is triggered by, quote, the murder of 2 or more persons, I stress, or more. It seems to me the fact there were, quote, more, unquote, must be a relevant factor for a judge to have in mind. Otherwise the courts would be saying the murder of 3 people added nothing to the sentence for the murder of 2, an unthinkable proposition. Second, the rape of Louise Hunt, of which the jury found you guilty last week, which offence was part of the same plan and the same course of conduct as the 3 killings. Third, these murders took place against a woman with whom you had been in an intimate relationship and her family, and so is within the Sentencing Council guidance on domestic abuse, which context makes crimes even more serious. Fourth, the murders of Louise and Hannah Hunt must have involved them becoming aware of the murders you had already committed, thereby inflicting dreadful mental suffering before death, a specified aggravating factor under the schedule. You have been referred to at times as a former soldier. In many cases that would serve as significant mitigation. Not so in your case, however, as your 2 years in the army included 286 days at home claiming to be ill. You never saw active service, and your utility to the armed forces can be gleaned in a parting comment from your commanding officer that, quote, his character is wholly unsuited to military employment, and he has no care nor concern beyond himself, unquote. There are 3 matters of mitigation. First, your lack of previous convictions. Second, your relative youth, though you were already 26 years old by the time of these offences. Third, you pleaded guilty to the offences of murder, though not at the first opportunity. I have reflected on all three aspects. The Sentencing Council guidance makes clear there may be cases where a guilty plea should lead the court to draw back from imposing a whole life order. I have considered and rejected that course, as the factors in favour of such an order are so compelling that they far outweigh all those pieces of mitigation. I am left in no doubt that this is a sentence I must impose. The sentences I pass are therefore: for possession of an offensive weapon, the crossbow, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the possession of an offensive weapon, the knife, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Carol Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order, the early release provisions are not to apply. For the false imprisonment of Louise Hunt, 8 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the rape of Louise Hunt, 20 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Louise Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply. For the murder of Hannah Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not